A recent study has addressed the idea that highly religious people might be less motivated by compassion than non-believers. It was a research done in the University of California in Berkeley, and it suggests that highly religious people are less motivated when helping a stranger than atheists, agnostic, and less religious people. The social scientists found that compassion consistently drove less religious people to be more generous. However, compassion was largely unrelated to how generous they were. This study was published in the Journal of Social, Psychological, and Personality Science. So the results, what they do is they challenge this assumption that acts of generosity and charity are largely driven by feelings of empathy and compassion. And so what they found was that with non-believers, that they would be more, when they were generous, it was because they were more passionate about something. Like for example, they had, they showed two videos to people, so let me find where that was. So they showed two brief videos, a neutral video and a heart-rending one. And after these videos, they were given like lab dollars to test like how generous they would be when they were like emotionally charged. And so the non-religious were more generous when they were emotionally charged. And
so when they saw the heart-rending video, they gave
yeah
more of these fake dollars
out.
Right.
And then they had other studies that also did like not just like watching the videos, but they would like do these like change and exchange experiments where they would hand, you would make dealings with other people to earn certain monies, and apparently the non-religious were also more generous with that money after the exchanging was done, as far as like helping other people that weren't succeeding.
Right.
And so they were much more like spreading things out.
So they were more willing to do favors for less money because they understood these people didn't have the amount of money to exchange for the favors needed.
Exactly. And so like the study did actually suggest that the issue behind this was, or the theory behind like why that would be, is that it's not that Christians and things like that or religious people weren't generous as well, but what they found is at the times that they were generous, it was more tied to things like, well, they felt like they had to. And so there was this, the theory that was postulated from this is that because their doctrines and their churches teach them to be generous, then they are, they're generous with this idea of like, oh, well, I'll be rewarded, or they have more of a, I'm going to get that pay. I mean, we've talked about this in the past. It's like people are like, well, if you're non-religious, then like, why wouldn't the world just fall apart and we wouldn't care about each other at all? And it's like, well, because you see, and this kind of shows it, the non-religious people, when we do good things, we do it just because.
Right.
Because we don't believe that there's some sort of karma or some sort of reward system based on our generosity. And so this study actually kind of backed up that theory.
Well, and it actually seems to show a difference in motivation, whereas a religious person does it because they feel required to, apparently, or more often they feel required to. An atheist or a non-religious person is doing it sort of with no expectation of reward.
Exactly.
Well, and probably due to a logical understanding, if I understand that if I help this person, it could be, in the end, benefit more people rather than doing it as an obligation. I mean, you understand this person has problems right now, so I am going to help them out. Whereas a religious person looks at, this person has problems, I have my own problems, but, I haven't met my Jesus quota for the day, so I'm going to go ahead and donate.
There was actually, apparently part of the study did actually differentiate the logical desire to help people, and that was actually where atheists and non-religious fell short, was actually the logical reason for helping people. It was specifically the emotional that was more an impact for the non-religious. That was the little bit surprising part for me, because they specifically mentioned that the logical aspects of helping a person was actually kind of neutral across the board, but it was the compassion from the atheists and things like that was the thing that was the big factor, was that they felt that pain. It's one of those things where I think we've talked about before, I actually feel like people of higher intelligence are also more prone, I think if there was a study about it, they're more prone to be apathetic because they have a kind of more imagination. So it's easier for them to actually put themselves in other people's shoes and feel that pain and take that to heart. And I mean, this article doesn't say that, but I would almost talk about the fact that I've seen in my experience a lot of religious people, not that they're stupid, but there's a lot of kind of creativity missing there, and like their ability to empathize with people, because it's like when you make devil's advocate for things like Islamic people, you know, like, and a lot of like hard, you know, handed Christians will be like, oh yeah, we need to, you know, kill all the Muslims and get them out of the Middle East and all that kind of shit, because they just can't even empathize with the idea. They can't put themselves in their shoes and realize like that they believe in their God as fervently as they do.
Right.
You know, and that there's some reason we need to understand why, you know, we need to break that religious barrier to help them because of the fact that they are as heavy-handed as some of our Christians are. I don't know, there's just there's a lot to be said about apathy and being able to put yourself in those people's shoes, and I'm wondering if that's where the compassion comes
Well, and
from.
I think from a standpoint of something that we had talked about before, this idea that for myself, speaking specifically about myself, when I see somebody who needs help, I feel inclined to help them, because part of my thought process is if they don't get help now, they're not going to get help later.
Mm-hmm.
This idea, I think a lot of times, especially religions who have this aspect of when you die you can go to paradise, people will say, well, it doesn't really matter if you don't help starving people now, because if they're Christian or whatever, when they die they're going to go on to a better place. And so for me personally, I'm like, I don't think that's going to happen. What they have now is what they have, so it's important to help them now, because it's not going to, there's not going to be a balancing of the scales later, where whatever suffering they had will just be more glory in heaven kind of a thing.
Yeah, and see, that's interesting, because it goes back to kind of your logical comment.
Well, and
There's a logical basis to that.
And I think you built upon it. I think more intelligent people have better introspection, and the fact that they understand what their actions do and how they interact with the world. Therefore, it's much easier to say, I understand what this will do and how this will interact with another human being, thus I can place myself in their shoes. So there's definitely an intellect correlation there with putting yourself into other people's shoes, because you can definitely understand the cause and effect of, if I don't help this person, no one is going to help them. If this person doesn't get fed, they are not going to eat and they are going to die.
Right.
Whereas I think, and it may be rude to say, but it's part of life, less intelligent people aren't thinking or so concerned about these things, and thus they aren't as eager to be as generous.
And I think that the thing that this really highlights to me is that people, I mean, however sort of the facts fall on what the logical reason was or what just the emotional response was for giving charitably to whatever situation that they were presented with, I think what this does put into a really clear light is that you don't need to teach people to be charitable. You don't need a religion. Religion doesn't actually make us better and say, oh, well, religious people are more charitable 100% of the time. Or
That's a great
when you
point.
look at the way the statistics fall, religious people are always exactly 312% more charitable, they give more and more often than these other people do. That's not the case at all.
Yeah.
It's people have their own reasons and will either be charitable or not be charitable, and the consistency is there. It's just across humanity, there's just this consistent, people are charitable, this much of the time. And whatever their reason is, doesn't really seem to matter, but you don't need religion to teach you to be that way.
Yeah, you don't need a God to be charitable.
Right, exactly. And so that it totally flies in the face of what we're always being told about how religion makes people better. No, it doesn't, apparently.
And
it's not required.
The one point I'd like to make that I always see is that you have... Wow. My brain just totally cleared out. Shit. I had a really good point. It's gone now.
Well, I guess we'll have to edit it.
But it's interesting.
Sorry.
You see, I've watched this in my own family. The people who, when they do generous things, it's on their Facebook wall. They advertise it. They're talking about, it may be built up for a week. I'm going to do this, and this is going to be a good thing. And it's everywhere, and they have pictures and stuff, whereas I see friends who do other charitable things where either I'm talking to you guys or something, and Chris is like, oh, I went and did highway cleanup, and it's like there's no, Chris didn't post 40 photos and group photos and talk about it and put it on his Twitter and put it on the Outcast website and build this thing up for weeks upon weeks upon weeks. My wife and I donate. I mean, it's probably not an extreme amount, but about $1,000 a year to different charitable organizations, and I don't put I do this here and this is how I do it. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this to appease somebody, and that's probably the biggest point. We're not doing this to get into a specific paradise. We do it because there are people who need help
for other people.
And it begs the question a little bit of what is more good? Being good and helping people just for the sake of itself, or doing it because you either fear a punishment or expect a reward for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like just doing it and having no, whatever happens, like maybe in some way I help this person and that helps society and so that helps me in kind of this nebulous way.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing, but actually thinking that I'm doing this and I'm going to get a direct reward or I'm going to avoid some kind of punishment.
Right.
Like which one is really more good? I think it's obvious, but that's just my opinion.
And as a side note, they specifically mentioned what you were discussing was that social recognition of the generosity was one of the big drivers for the religious in their generosity in the study. It was that recognition of like, oh, look at me do good.
Right.
Whereas
I think it can be argued that
everything
that anyone does in a way is sort of selfish. When people are, I don't want to really pick on anybody in particular, but it's like if you're a firefighter and you run into a building and save people, it can be argued from a sociological standpoint that like part of the value that the firefighter gets out of that is he gets recognition, he gets looked at as a hero. In addition to like he gets paid for doing that job or whatever. And when you stop and help people on the street, like this old lady dropped some books she was carrying. The idea is, yeah, you help her pick that up and she thanks you and you get that gratitude. And other people maybe see it and think, oh, what a nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the reason that I bring that up is because it brings me back to this idea that religion makes people better, where it doesn't seem to.
Mm-hmm.
Across the board, people do those things. Whatever the reason is,
right.
Religion is not giving you this incredibly higher instance of like, wow, religious people are monumentally better than everyone else. And I think religious people need to ask themselves why that's not the case. If their religion is really so valuable and is really teaching them to be such better people, why does it not seem to be reflected?
Yeah. Great points. Outcasts out.